Welcome to Inverse Happy Hour, everyone. We've got Michael Moreci. He's a great author of both books and comics. He's got a Star Wars series going on right now, sort of fills in some gaps in the Clone Wars. He's also got The Plot, which is a very cool horror comic that's ongoing right now. He wrote a book series called Black Star Renegades. And so we're going to talk about all that stuff. If you got any questions for Mike, put them in the comments. We're going to get a special preview reading of the next edition of The Plot later, which I'm really excited for. But before then, we're going to talk about all this stuff. So please, if you have any questions, let us know. I wanted to start by asking about the Clone Wars comic you're working on, which looks really cool. I saw it got some attention in like Star Wars nerdy internet spaces this week because which is like all I do is look at that stuff for work. It's great. There's a story with Count Dooku. You got to write Count Dooku fighting Anakin and Obi-Wan. What was that like? He's such an iconic character. What was it? Was there a lot of pressure on you, like personally, just to handle that character? I know you're a Star Wars fan.
I am. Yeah, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Yeah, I don't know if it's like, I don't kind of angle my arm to show my, there it is.
Oh yeah. The tattoo is fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically have my life on right now. It's Stephen King and Star Wars. Basically, that's it. Yeah, I mean, always writing Star Wars is a challenge. Like it presents definitely certain challenges of like capturing voices, and capturing look and feel. Because when you write Star Wars, there's a lot of different looks and feels. Like you have like the Clone Wars and prequels look and feel much different than the sequel trilogy looks and feels, and like the Resistance cartoon, which would be kind of like the closest analog to the Clone Wars cartoon series. They're really different looks, really different feels. So capturing those two things, capturing that specific, not only the specific Star Wars, but the specific era, does like bring in certain pressure. And then you have certain things like when you talk about Dooku, like being, going back to King, being a big horror fan, like you have Christopher Lee. Like you're trying to channel Christopher Lee.
It's a lot of pressure. He's one of the best.
He's one of the greatest, I mean, like just his role as Dooku. I mean, just him playing Dooku is absurd. It's just because Lucas loved the Hammer film so much that he got the Rogues Gallery. He got Cushing. He got Lee.
Right. Wow.
He got Hammer in the Star Wars universe. So it is crazy, but it's fun. But the good thing about that, though, on the flip side, while there's a lot of pressure to try to capture Christopher Lee, it's also kind of easy to capture Christopher Lee because he is such a robust personality that you can hear that Christopher Lee-ism in your head.
Good point.
Yeah. Distinctly says everything. So while it
got that gravitas, like
yeah,
I can hear his voice right now if I think about it.
I know I want to try and make it, but I'll embarrass myself. So
let me ask you another Dooku question while we're at the topic. So I wrote an op-ed a couple months ago arguing that Disney needs to make like a Count Dooku live action prequel series. Like, what's young Count Dooku like? How do you feel about that? And also, will you take on the responsibility of writing it?
Oh yeah, well yes. It would basically be like a weird, going back to what we were talking about, it'd be like a weird Hammer Star Wars movie. Like,
yeah.
He grew up in a gothic space castle.
Oh my god, it sounds incredible.
I know, it would be it's funny, Kevin, I'm sure Kevin Scott touched on this with his audio drama about Count Dooku. That's like sort of an origin. It's a little bit about his younger days in the Jedi Order and about his like upbringing, which is, goes into that whole like regal background because he is a count, which is a weird thing in the Star Wars universe that you're, as a count.
Right. Kind of rare.
Yeah, like I can't remember any other counts that are around.
No.
But yeah, I mean, getting a young Dooku to see like his upbringing in a live action series, like prequel stuff, and like him, this weird title and whatever aristocracy he comes from, like flirting with he's sort of an evil guy underneath, but he gets involved in the Jedi Order nonetheless, and you see him evolve to what he ultimately becomes. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I think we got something going here. We got one question from the audience from someone by the username Hikes and Pipes, And again, if you're watching, you have any questions about anything about Star Wars, clearly Michael can talk about anything about comics or writing. So this is a question about writing. He just wants to know, or they just want to know, there you go. What is your creative process?
Well, no.
Oh, well, let's get.
No. So to kind of boil it down, you always have like talk when you're thinking about writing and writers, like one of the biggest things that people talk about is, if you're a plotter or a pantser, meaning for anyone, plotter is somebody who goes in and plots the entire story ahead of time. Will go in, actually beat by beat, write it all out. Pantser is someone who just is like, as the saying goes by, the seat of their pants. They're just writing it out and seeing what happens. King is a notorious pantser. He just sits down and writes, and whatever comes out. That's why his books always have like 9 endings. But like for me personally, I'm a plotter. Like I'm a big. I just like to sit down, heavily outline everything I do. I like to know every single beat, and my plots. The outlines that I write are really, really detailed as well. Like so, I'll turn in to like. I just turned in, actually, as a matter of fact, Monday, a outline for a new graphic novel that I'm doing, and I think the outline was like 10 pages, single spaced, and
Wow.
Left my editor who's got to read that. But the advantage of that, though, while it is a hassle in some ways because it's heavy lifting at the beginning, once that outline is done and you go to scripting, you're just kind of ready to run and go. It becomes a lot easier. You just blow through the script at that point. You're still making discoveries, and dialogue is its own thing, but like you're not trying to figure out like what's going to happen next, or importantly, what is the thematic through line of this story. You've worked all that stuff out, and that's pretty important, I think.
Yeah, definitely planning ahead, always good if you can do it. It's not so easy though.
Yeah, I envy fans to sit down and just be like, just type away and just a story happens.
Right.
That's like magic to me. I don't even get it.
That's a good point. I know you're a big Stephen King fan. I just want to shout out. We talked to Joe Hill. I talked to Joe Hill a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. He's a great guy. You can anyone watching, check that out on YouTube. It's a fun interview. He's awesome. I have one more Star Wars question for you. So I was doing some research on your current Clone Wars story, and it says, maybe this is true, maybe it's not, on Wikipedia, which I'm sure you're aware of as like the Star Wars Wikipedia.
Oh, yeah.
It says you wanted to get Gregor, who's one of the clones who famously defies Order 66. You wanted to get him into your story, and it didn't happen. I'm curious, what was happening there, and also what did you want to do with Gregor? He's an interesting character, and I'd just love to know what you had envisioned for him.
I'm glad you asked, because now I can finally reveal my Gregor.
Perfect.
So the series takes place. So if people don't know, Gregor is, we meet him again in Rebels. He's one of the surviving. Yeah. So we know he made it through Order 66. We know he made it through everything that happened, between episodes 3 and 4, and what we know about him from the Clone Wars is that he's a clone at some point. I don't think we ever find out how he lost his memory, do we? I don't. Right?
No. We got to see Rex's thing in Clone Wars this year, but it's still very unclear how the other clones who were with him got through Order 66.
Yeah. So at some point, though, earlier he loses memories. We find Gregor when he has amnesia, and he's enlisted like this battle. This is in season 3, maybe something like that. But anyway, he's like this badass not mercenary, but like this like one-man army of a clone who's just so awesome in like the 2 or 3 episodes he was in the Clone Wars. As he recovers his memory and helps this Republic mission, and it's a great Star Wars Clone Wars arc. But anyway, the beauty of what my series is that it takes place like before the Battle of Christophsis, which is like really, 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 really early. This is almost like soon after Attack of the Clones. So we're talking, it's like right at the beginning of the Clone Wars. So Gregor didn't have amnesia yet. He's still around. He's still a clone. So I was like, well, I can use him. I can do something with him. So I had Gregor in there, and he was going to be part of Cody's command for
very cool.
and he was going to be on this. So issue 5 is a Cody Obi-Wan issue, and it's basically, I'll just say it. So basically, it's like Obi-Wan. It's like a take on the Bridge of River Kwai. So it's like Obi-Wan playing Alex Guinness playing Obi-Wan.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I kind of had to do it. I was like, for everyone who gets this, I'll be greatly impressed because.
So are they captured and they're like being forced to build a bridge, or is it?
Yeah.
Am I being too literal? That's actually what's happening. That's amazing.
So Gregor was supposed to be in it. He's like plays this like he like does this little side mission in it where he's like this badass commando who goes and does these cool things. And I wrote the whole script, and then unfortunately Lucasfilm came back. They're like, no.
Interesting.
Yeah, there is Lucasfilm's always awesome, but there's some times where they're like, you get held back on stuff. Like for instance, like Ahsoka was a big sticking point. There's no Ahsoka in my series, which is a bummer. That's why one of the reasons we put it before Christophsis, so like there's no question she's just not around yet.
Right.
How's that really easy? I get asked probably a million times, where's Ahsoka? She's just not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to do too much like armchair theory with you. It sounds almost like maybe they have other plans for Gregor, but who knows? I guess we'll see.
I think they just didn't like the idea of trying to figure out how he got amnesia.
That's fair. That's, I guess, a whole other can of worms.
Right.
Well, again, please, if you have any questions, if you're watching this and you want to ask Michael Moreci anything about Star Wars, comics, books, any of that, put in the comments. I'll relay it. I wanted to move on to the plot, which is a very cool horror series you've been doing.
Thanks.
It's also the first of a new imprint from Vault Comics about horror. So I wanted to ask, what were you trying to do in sort of setting the tone and style for a whole new line from a publisher? Is that something you think about?
Yeah, for sure. So the book, the plot is co-written with Tim Daniel, who's one of the principals at Vault. He's their designer, but he's also one of the people behind Vault. And Tim and I also collaborated on a couple of horror series for Boom called Curse and Burning Fields a few years ago. This is our first collaboration at Vault. And basically, when we set out to do this, one of the big bedrocks that we wanted to establish, and I think that's been carried forward. The other Nightfall book was Black Stars Above, written by Lonnie Nadler, which I think is a tremendous series. Then next year it's The Autumnal with Chris Sheehan and Daniel Kraus, who, if people don't know, Daniel is...
Oh, he's great.
Yeah, he's
We're going to have him on next week, actually. I'm going to be talking to him very soon. So.
Oh, really?
I'll tell him to say hi.
Yeah, he's a buddy of mine. We both live in Chicago.
Nice.
He's awesome. His book, The Autumnal, is great. I've read a few of the scripts there. It's fantastic. But one of the things we wanted to do, like I said, this trickles down to Autumnal, this trickles down to Black Stars Above, and we use this way throughout the plot, is that we wanted to have horror that is the kind of horror that Tim and I love, which is character-driven, theme-driven, very kind of, that almost like Stephen King-ish blue-collar, I want to say classic horror in a way, but we're not after horror that is, schlocky. We're not after horror, gory. We're after a horror that retains story first and foremost, character first and foremost, and weaves in, really great scares on that kind of foundation. Put a great story and great character into situations that make you care and build the scares out of that, and that's what we want to see the line be, and that's some of our favorite horror, like the Conjuring series comes to mind. There's so many great things, the King stuff, the Mike Flanagan, I think his film and television work, I think, is a great example of that kind of horror. Paul Tremblay, there's so many that I can think of that are doing this kind of horror, and that's the kind of the model that we wanted to follow. Grady Hendrix, another, but that's the model we wanted to follow and keep going. And I think it's a good place horror's in a great place right now, and I'm glad that we're kind of part of it in a way. It's nice.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a bit of a horror renaissance. Mike Flanagan's an awesome example. I thought Dr. Sleep was great. His movies have all been really, really good. I'm really excited to hear a bit from the plot in a minute. I did want to ask one more question, which is, I've seen you tweet that you are making your own movie now, which sounds really exciting.
Yeah.
You posted a few of your influences, including Poltergeist, The Shining, and The Exorcist, which are all classics, of course, but also
Yeah.
sort of to your point earlier, like horror about family.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, is your movie also, would you describe it as a horror movie about a family?
Definitely. Yeah, yeah. What can I say? It's a family haunted house story, but with a little bit of a different focus.
Mm.
It's kind of like a faith-based horror. It's about a family.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
what's that?
I said that's interesting.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So it's basically about a family about struggling with faith in the sense of like we live in a
Mm.
very old right now, and I started writing
Yeah,
this and pitching this before things took took a turn. um,
sure.
and it's about people trying to say like, how do I? It's not necessarily faith in God, although it can be read that way. But it's like, how do I have faith in the world that things are good, things can be good, and this family finds themselves renovating this house that has deep, dark secrets, as most of these houses in haunted house stories do.
Yes.
Um, and it kind of brings out their ideas of like how to have faith and goodness and how to live, how to continue to live a good life despite things really being bad around you, and struggling with the
Mm.
idea of how you continue to believe things when what you see leads you to the contrary.
Wow, sounds heavy. I mean, I love a good haunted house, so I'm there. Obviously, Hollywood is paused, to a certain degree right now. But what stage of the process are you in? Are you writing the script? Have you finished the script?
It's funny. I just started no, yesterday writing the second draft. I just got
So
they
cool.
working like their script doctors because this is my first foray. I haven't
Right.
written a script like in years, long time. So like this guy is working with me. He's great. He's kind of guiding the process and helping it along. So I had notes back from him like 2 weeks ago or so, and I'm just getting to the second draft now. And
Right.
luckily we're in a good place because this is like, the movie is, and we've done this, we've kind of adjusted things now, knowing what we know of like COVID and restrictions that are going to be happening. Hollywood and filmmaking is in a weird place because
Right.
you can only shoot under certain guidelines. The guidelines are good, the guidelines are necessary. But this is a very self-contained movie. We made it even more self-contained. So like when the script is done and when things open up a little bit, it makes it easier to shoot because we can do it under these guidelines and under these restrictions and do it the right way, the way films need to be made for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's a good time to be writing, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, we got a question from a user by the name of Salty Beef asking about Black Star Renegades, which is your original sci-fi not series of novels. Just sort of wondering, I think there have been two so far. What's your plan on those? Are you working on a third? Do you have an idea of how many there might be in total?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I have an idea for, as a true Star Wars fan, I have an idea for a prequel.
Oh, classic, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm a prequel defender to the end. And there's a lot of us out there. But like, yeah, so right now I'm in a position. So I'm writing a different novel, which is kind of on pause as I'm doing the screenplay. I'm writing a novel that's a horror novel. Speaking of horror, it's a YA
Hmm.
horror book. So I have to finish the screenplay. I have to finish that novel, and then I need to talk to Macmillan, who published it, and see what we want to do because I'm still under contract for books. So one way or another, I'm writing something.
There you go.
So I want to, yes, I do want to continue the series. I wrote it so it could be a duology on its own, like the way the
Mhm.
second We Are Mayhem ends. It's funny. There was when We Are Mayhem, the original draft that I wrote had a epilogue in it,
Mm.
and my editor was like, "Well, let's not put this in because you're really cementing that there's going to be more and more like now." And he knew we
Oh,
both doing that like right away because I was, as I was finishing that, I was jumping to I forget what. So he's like, let's cut this out, and because we both knew we were going to table this for a while, we're going to write these first two books, and I think I wrote them in 2 books in 2 years. We're going to write these 2 books. You're going to go do what you do next, your next obligation. Then we're going to circle back around on this. So we left out, so we made the ending more like, okay, this could end here. It's not the intention, but instead of like making it like a hard and fast, like there's gonna be
Yeah.
more cliffhanger, you know, like um, so to answer the question, yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of time and me getting to it, which I hope to get to in 2021. I think will probably be realistic that I can get back to that.
Nice. That's good to hear. All right. Well, I don't want to keep it for too long, and I also really want to get to this reading because it sounds like it'll be a lot of fun. So, are you ready? And can you sort of give us like a setup on what's going on in the plot?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I actually have, so the first trade, I can show it here. So this is the first trade. This is the plot. Here, I'll turn on a
Yeah,
lens.
got a little image here actually too. Or, no, never mind. I don't.
Oh, well, here's the first trade. Here's volume one. So basically the setup is, it takes place in 1974, and it concerns this family, the Blaines, who we learn in volume one are suffering under some sort of curse, and we haven't discovered what yet. But
Hmm.
the elder brother of these two brothers, Charlie and Chase, Charles gets murdered in issue one. Him and his wife and his children, Zach and Mackenzie, end up in the care of Chase Blaine, who's their uncle, their only living relative. Chase is kind of this ne'er-do-well, almost a drifter character. And having nowhere else to take the two kids, he ends up taking them to their family plot. That's why it's called the plot, you know,
Hmm.
to only place he can take them. So they go and live there. And when they go to live there, Mackenzie, Zach, and Chase, you know, kind of dig up old ghosts from the past, sometimes literal, and they discover there's a lot of history. There's a lot of deep and dark history to this house and to their family and to what their family has done to. At one point, they were in prominence of this town. They were like the lead family of this town, and what led them to this position.
Hmm.
Um, Series ends with Chase. The fourth issue, the last issue of this arc ends with Chase going up to the attic to literally confront the past. It's a rainstorm outside. He knows there's something going on in the attic. He goes up and he finds these journals that date back to the 17th century of the Blaines coming here,
Hmm.
the colonial times, and starts discovering what happened, what brought this curse down upon them, and what brought this kind of like generational thing that's happening. We don't know what the generational thing is yet, but he's starting to unravel that, and that's what issue 5 actually takes place. Let me look it up here. What year? The issue 5 takes place all in 1674. So start to really see the foundations of what bad things happened that have transcended to 300 years later.
Cool. Very cool. All right.
Thanks. Yeah, but I can start. So I'll give some. I think has anybody else read a comic on here before?
We've had a few. We even had actually Rob Liefeld came on and read some old Fantastic Four comic. He's got a lot of energy. But yeah, we've had a few. It's fun. I'd say give us a couple pages and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'll try to match Rob. I won't. So this is the B cover from the plot. This is from I'll hold it up a little bit better. This is from Chris Sheehan, who I mentioned before. He's drawing illustrating the autumnal with Dan Krause. Yeah, so this is the plot. 1674. This is page 1. I'll show it first before I start reading it. It's very cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wanted this. The artist, Josh Hickson, who is a tremendous artist, I'll give a little context here. We always talk about, and with the colorist as well, which is the first issue that Kurt Michael Russell colored. Originally, it's Jordan Boyd. He had to step away because he had just overwhelmed with stuff. But we always talk about color palettes. We always talk about mood and feel. And Josh is a tremendous artist. And one of the things we wanted this book, this issue 5, to oscillate between cold and hot. I'll show you some of it. We'll get to some of the heat that we see later. And Kurt Michael Russell did a fantastic job of doing this contrast of these two kind of world that our main character, Vitus Blaine, lives in, the world that he's ultimately going to step into. The world he lives in is cold, and the world he steps into is hot. And there's very, purposeful choices made in the colors and everything that Josh is doing on the page. So we start, and these are a series of captions read by Vitus Blaine. It's Maine, 1674, and it's winter, and we're in the colony in which they've just come recently, coming from, obviously coming from Europe, and now they're here and they're struggling. So I am the only one who read the note. I was unaware the Jansen woman knew how to write, let alone had parchment. Her words were brief. She was starving. Her children were starving. What rations were meant to go to her, she asked to go to her family instead. To have aught we need to survive is to live in persevere surplus. I will ration freely. I will offer to her daughters 10 rations a day and never run out, for we have truly nothing. An endless, ceaseless supply of nothing. And from it, I can give and give and give, for rationing nothing still leaves us with nothing aplenty, not one drop gone, one crumb fewer than before. And then you have somebody talking from off panel. We see the woman who died, who actually committed suicide, so her family could have her rations. Here, we cannot do this. We cannot. 'Tis a sin. She needs a burial, proper burial. Are we not far enough from his favor? Now we venture to desecrate the body of one of our own. We have been given a great many hardships, but does that not mean we must reduce ourselves to this savagery? It is upon us to lift our spirits and he's interrupted. I'll show this page here. We see Malthae, who's interrupting. He's like a young spiritual guide in the settlement, who's runs oppositional to Vitus. And a lot of these camps that came, especially from Northern Europe, were very religious based, very Puritan and stuff. And Vitus is the one who's speaking out from more of a point of pragmatism than faith. And Vitus speaks and says, "We have no choice. The ground is frozen solid, and we cannot risk the precious tools we have to break it." To which Malthae says, "But this, to do this." Vitus, "'Tis better than leaving her to the wolves. That desecration no one wants. And attracting bloodthirsty animals only endangers us all. Our light fades. Let us see to our business." And as he says this, we see the people with torches who are ready to, because they can't bury her, because they can't leave her, to burn her, which is a very bad desecration for Puritan faith, especially in that time. So as they burn her, and this is the next page we'll be reading from, we see this is Vitus in the center. We see more of Vitus giving narration and captions. Through his sorrowful anguish, Malthae fashioned scripture into a hurried funeral service. He was, no doubt, compelled to do so, but his words died on the blistering wind. Instead, I heard the prayers of all the suffering people around me, in the howling gust, the hollow eyes, and the sputters of flame. Prayers for food, prayers for relief, prayers for salvation. And for the first time in my life, in all my life, I wondered, are those prayers heard by anyone else? I grew embittered at the thought, for the death of all those prayers birthed a realization too great to bear, that the world is vast, and we, faithful or not, are alone within it. And then we have a short scene that I'll read here, where I can show you the spread where Vitus goes home. He has a conflict with his wife and children. We see him on the path to questioning things, as they run out of food, as they endure this hardship, that questioning the faith that is the bedrock of why they came here and the bedrock of their lives. And it's kind of difficult for everyone around him to bear. And this is, this is his wife talking at first. You did this alone, hellfire. You have made hellfire of this woman's flesh. To which Vitus says, and what would you have me do, Leva? Leva, his wife, says, lead them. And to do that, you must allow him to lead you. Pray, Vitus. Pray, like how the good Malthae prays. Tell me, have his misses to the Lord brought us bountiful hunts, rain in the springtime? Have they brought us mercy? What has prayer yielded? dead mothers, orphan children. Look around you. Look where we are. To which Leva says, we are exactly where we are meant to be, where he wants us to be. It is vanity to even question the path he has put us on. Vita says, then I shall choose vanity over a funeral pyre. He's interrupted by their daughter, says, mother, father, please, you upset Bram, who is their son, their younger son. And Vita says, I would rather the boy know the truth and be upset. 'Tis better he understands why he suffers the lashes of those he loves most, because he endeavored to save us instead of doing nothing. Leva says, nothing. Faith requires bravery. It demands temerity to believe that if there is salvation to be had, it can only be had through his word and his will. Vita says, if this is the will of our Lord, then he is not as powerful and merciful as we believe, or he is simply not listening.